All right, if you're a senior architect, you know the deal. You're living in the chaos of managing APIs across, two, three different clouds? Well, today, we're not just talking about the problem, we're building the blueprint to fix it. We're architecting a unified multi-cloud API schema registry. Let's dive in.
So, does this question hit a little too close to home? If you're out there juggling API development across AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud, you felt this pain. You know, each platform has its own little quirks, its own services, its own set of rules. It's a massive headache, and it's exactly the problem we're here to solve today.
So here's our mission, our blueprint for this whole thing. First, we're going to get really clear on the multi-cloud API problem. Then we'll lay out the unified registry as the solution. From there, we'll dive into the core architectural pillars, the really important stuff. Then see how we actually connect it to the big cloud providers. And finally, we'll talk about the endgame, achieving true API governance.
Okay, before we even start dreaming up a solution, we have to be absolutely crystal clear on the problem. Let's really dig in and get a sharp picture of the multi-cloud API challenge that so many of us are up against right now.
You know, this right here is the default reality for way too many teams. It's just chaos. It's a world of siloed development where the user object in your AWS service has slightly different fields than the user object over in an Azure service. And this isn't just messy, right? It's a recipe for synchronization nightmares and these subtle, impossible to find bugs that just grind everything to a halt and introduce some serious risk.
So you're really at a fork in the road here. On one side, you have the world of siloed schemas. That means you're dealing with inconsistency that causes these totally unpredictable bugs. Your governance is all over the place, which, of course, jacks up your security risk, and you're creating just a ton of developer friction. Teams are wasting precious time trying to figure out API contracts that should be simple. But on the other side, with a unified approach, you get consistency. You get enhanced safety because your rules are centralized, and you get a massive boost in developer velocity because those contracts are suddenly clear, reliable, and trustworthy.
So, the big question is, how do we get out of that chaotic mess on the left and into that orderly world on the right? Well, that brings us right to our solution, the unified registry.
Now, let's be super precise about what we're actually building here. An API schema registry is basically the central library for all your API data contracts. Just think of a schema as the official, non-negotiable agreement on how data has to be structured for any given API. The registry is the one place, the single source, that manages, stores, and most importantly, validates these contracts. And it doesn't care if that API lives on AWS, Azure, or GCP.
And this is the end goal, the vision we're chasing, a single source of truth. It means that when a developer, any developer, needs to build a new service or use an existing one, they know exactly where to go. There's no guesswork. That simple, powerful idea is honestly transformative for any complex organization.
All right, let's get into the nuts and bolts, the how. As the architect, you have to build this thing on a rock-solid foundation. So let's break down the core architectural pillars that actually make it work.
It all comes down to three core pillars. First up, strategic versioning. We're talking about something like semantic versioning, so you can clearly tell if a change is a major break, a minor addition, or just a simple patch. Second, automated validation. This is huge. Schemas have to be checked for correctness inside your CI/CD pipeline, long before they ever get in your production. And third, proactive consumer notifications, to make sure teams get an automatic heads up before a schema change has a chance to break their stuff.
And let me be perfectly clear. These are not optional, nice-to-have features. A registry without versioning is just ambiguous and confusing. Without automated validation, it's completely unreliable. And without notifications, it's a black box that is absolutely guaranteed to cause production outages down the line. These three pillars are your non-negotiable.
Okay, so we've designed our central registry in theory, but this is the real test, right? How does it actually plug into the real world? How do we enforce these rules out there on AWS, Azure, and GCP?
This is where the really meets the road. And the great news is each cloud provider gives us an enforcement point. In AWS, you'll use the API Gateway's built-in schema validation hooks. Over in Azure, you'll use APIM's policy definitions to make a call out to your registry for validation. And in Google Cloud, you integrate during the API config validation step. The key takeaway here is that you're not fighting the platforms. You're using their own native features to enforce your centralized governance. It's smart.
So, we've built the system, we've connected it to our cloud platforms. Now, what's the payoff? This is where we finally achieve the mission's ultimate goal, true unified API governance.
And the benefits here are very real and very tangible. I mean, of course, you get centralized management and consistent policies, which is great.
It even works for your internal Kubernetes services. But think about what that really means. By dramatically cutting the risk of deploying a breaking change, you give your developers the confidence to move faster. They're not walking on eggshells anymore. And that is how you truly accelerate productivity, by getting rid of systemic friction and fear.
Look, if you remember one thing from all of this, let it be this. If you want to build API governance that can actually scale across multiple clouds and hundreds of different teams, it all starts right here. Centralized schema management isn't some luxury item, it is the absolute foundation, period.
So, this blueprint, it's more than just a technical diagram. It's a strategy. It's your playbook for how you, as the architect, can transform that multi-cloud chaos into a world that's ordered, efficient, and most importantly, safe. And that really just leaves us with one final question to think about. The cloud isn't getting any simpler, right? We're going to see more services, more platforms, more APIs. That's the future. By putting a unified registry in place, you're not just solving today's problems, you're actually building an architecture that's ready for whatever comes next. So is yours.